Chapter 1: The Fall. Rowan. The rain had started as a drizzle, the kind that barely registered against your skin but soaked through every layer until you felt heavy and waterlogged from the inside out. By the time I reached the old iron bridge, it had turned into a steady downpour, drumming against the metal railings like impatient fingers. My sneakers squelched with every step. The laces on my left shoe had come undone somewhere along the walk from the bus stop, but I didn't bother tying them. What was the point? I gripped the cold, wet railing and stared down at the black ribbon of the river far below. The city lights reflected in fractured shards across the water, reds and golds and sickly yellows from the street lamps that never quite reached this forgotten stretch of bridge. It was almost beautiful, almost peaceful. The kind of view people posted on Instagram with captions about finding serenity in the chaos. For me, it just looked like an exit sign. 27 years old. 27 fucking years, and this is where it ends. The thought looped in my head like a bad song. I'd replayed the greatest hits of my failures on the long walk here. The breakup with Tyler 3 months ago, his parting words still burned. "You're just stuck, Rowan. You drag everything down with you." The eviction notice taped to my apartment door this morning. The overdraft fees piling up like snowdrifts. The barista job where my manager had pulled me aside yesterday to say, "You look like death, kid. Customers are noticing." Even my mother's last voicemail left 2 weeks ago. "I'm worried about you, honey. Call me back when you can." I hadn't. What would I say? "Hey, Mom, I'm sorry I'm such a disappointment that the only thing left feels like disappearing." My chest ached with a tiredness that went deeper than bones. It wasn't dramatic despair, not the kind you see in movies with swelling music and tears. It was quiet. Bone-deep exhaustion that made every breath feel like too much effort. Sleeping had become a joke, restless hours staring at water stains on the ceiling, wondering why I kept waking up at all. Eating felt pointless. Smiling at customers felt like wearing someone else's face. I was so goddamn tired of pretending I was okay when every atom in my body screamed that I was. I climbed up onto the wide concrete ledge, sneakers slipping a little on the wet surface. The railing pressed cold against my palms as I swung my legs over. Wind whipped up from the river, carrying the smell of oil and decay and distant rain. My hoodie clung to my skin, heavy and useless. I let my shoes dangle over the edge, toes pointing down into nothing. One step, that's all. One step and the wind takes you. One step and no more rent due dates. No more rejection emails. No more lying in bed wondering what the hell is wrong with you that you can't just be normal. My heart hammered, but it wasn't fear exactly. More like resignation mixed with a strange, hollow relief. I'd written no note. Who would even read it? Tyler would feel a twinge of guilt for a week, then move on. Mom would cry, but she'd survive. Everyone did. I loosened my grip on the railing. My fingers were numb. Rain ran into my eyes, blurring the lights below into watercolor smears. I leaned forward just a fraction, testing the pull of gravity. "This is it, I'm sorry. I really did try." The world tilted. For one sickening heartbeat, I was weightless, stomach lurching upward as my body committed to the fall. Wind roared in my ears. The river rushed up to meet me, black and hungry. My arms pinwheeled uselessly. A scream lodged in my throat but never made it out. Then impact. Not the water, arms. Impossibly strong arms slamming around my waist like steel cables wrapped in silk and ice. The momentum jerked me backward violently. The bridge spun away above me. I was flying, no, being carried through the rain-soaked air at impossible speed. My back hit a solid chest. Cold. So cold it burned through my soaked hoodie. We dropped. The fall lasted only seconds, but it stretched forever. My legs kicked uselessly. I gasped for air that tasted like rain and night and something metallic. Then we landed, hard enough that my teeth clicked together, but the arms around me absorbed most of the shock. Mud squelched under boots that weren't mine. The stranger didn't even stumble. I hung there limp and shaking, pressed against a body that felt carved from winter marble. My heart slammed so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. Adrenaline flooded every vein, making my skin buzz and my stomach churn. I was alive, still alive. The shame of it hit harder than the near death. Damien. Idiot, pathetic, fragile little mortal. I had been perched on the lower railing of the bridge for the better part of an hour, letting the rain slide off my coat like it was nothing. The night had been boring, another century blending into the last, humans scurrying below like ants with their tiny dramas. I wasn't even hungry. The last warm blood I'd taken had been forgettable, her blood thin and tasting of cheap wine and regret. Then he appeared. The boy-man, really, though he carried himself like something already half-broken, shuffled onto the upper span with the slow, defeated gait of someone who had already died inside. I smelled the despair before I saw his face. Salt from old tears, the sour edge of exhaustion, and beneath it all a vein of something sweet and stubborn that refused to die completely. His blood called to me like a distant bell. Warm, alive, different. I told myself I wouldn't interfere. I had watched dozens leap from this bridge over the decades. Their final thoughts were always the same: regret, relief, fear. None of them were worth the effort of saving. Mortals broke so easily. Why prolong the inevitable? But this one, Rowan. The name drifted up from his scattered thoughts like smoke. Rowan Hale. His mind was a storm of self-loathing and bone-deep fatigue that tugged at some ancient, forgotten corner of me. I hadn't felt that pull in centuries. It irritated me. It intrigued me. Leave him. You are Damien, ancient and untouchable. You do not play savior for broken toys. He climbed the ledge anyway. I rose to my feet on the railing below, coat flapping in the wind. Rain beaded on my skin but never chilled me. When he leaned forward and committed to the fall, something primal snapped inside my chest. I moved without conscious thought. The leap carried me upward in a blur. My arms locked around his waist mid-plunge, one hand cradling the back of his head to protect that fragile skull. His body was pathetically light, skin and bone and pounding heart. The scent of him flooded me, rain-soaked cotton, faint soap, and the rich copper promise of blood just under the surface. My fangs lengthened instantly, aching with a hunger that had nothing to do with mere feeding. We plummeted together the last 30 feet. I twisted midair, landing with feline grace on the muddy riverbank. Mud splattered my expensive boots. I didn't care. Rowan gasped and coughed in my arms, trembling violently. His heart thundered against my chest like a war drum. I could feel his erection, small, involuntary, pressed against my thigh from the adrenaline surge. How deliciously human, fear and survival twisting into base need. I should drop him, walk away, let him process the miracle and go back to his miserable little life. Instead, I held him closer, one hand sliding slowly down his soaked spine. "Easy little heartbeat," I murmured, voice low and velvetrough, laced with the arrogance I wore like armor. "If you wanted attention, there are simpler ways than dramatic dives." He jerked in my grip, trying to pull back. I let him just enough to see his face. Wide brown eyes, lashes clumped with rain, cheeks flushed from terror and shame. Lips parted, breath coming in short, panicked bursts. He was ordinary by mortal standards: messy dark hair, sharp jaw, the kind of soft vulnerability that made predators like me want to ruin and protect in equal measure. You caught me," he rasped, his voice cracked. "From the bridge, how?" I smirked, letting just the edge of my fangs show. "Vampire, ancient, bored, take your pick." My thumb brushed a raindrop from his cheek almost gently. Almost. Most humans thank their rescuer, some even offer their necks. "You're already half hard for me. Interesting survival instinct." His face burned crimson even in the dark. I could smell the fresh wave of embarrassment mixing with lingering arousal. It made my own cock stir, something that hadn't happened from a mortal in decades. "Walk away, Damien. This one will only complicate things. You don't save them, you consume them." Yet my arms refused to release him. His warmth seeped into my cold skin, a living flame I hadn't realized I craved. Centuries of detachment cracked like thin ice. I wanted to taste him, to pin him in the mud and drink while he whimpered my name, to keep him. I set him on his feet instead, forcing myself to step back. Mud sucked at his sneakers. He swayed, knees weak. I caught his elbow with casual strength, steadying him. "Go home, Rowan Hale," I said, voice dripping with mocking arrogance. I let him feel the weight of my gaze, red eyes glowing faintly in the dark. "Try not to waste my generosity a second time. The river is patient, but I am not." He stared, mouth open, questions tumbling behind those exhausted eyes. I could read every frantic thought. Is this real? Am I dead? Who is he? Why me? Before he could speak, I dissolved into shadow and mist, reappearing on the bridge above. From the darkness, I watched him stand there, shivering, touching the place on his waist where my arms had been. He looked small, lost, alive. Damn you, I thought, fangs biting into my own lip hard enough to draw blood. What the hell have you done to me? I stayed in the shadows long after he stumbled away toward the city lights, following at a distance, watching, wanting, fighting the arrogant certainty that this fragile human now belonged to me, whether he knew it or not. Rowan. I don't remember the walk home. My legs moved on autopilot, sneakers heavy with river mud, hoodie dripping a cold trail behind me on the sidewalk. Every few steps I glanced over my shoulder, heart stuttering, half expecting, hopping, fearing to see him again. That stranger, the man who had appeared out of nowhere and caught me like I was nothing more than a falling leaf. Who the hell was he? He'd known my name. How? I hadn't told him. I could still feel the ghost of his arms locked around my waist, impossibly strong, freezing cold even through my soaked clothes. His voice, low, smooth, edged with mocking amusement, kept replaying in my head. Little heartbeat. What kind of person says something like that? And those eyes, for a second I'd sworn they glowed red in the dark. Fangs? No, that was impossible. The fall must have messed with my head. People don't have fangs. People don't leap off bridges and catch someone midair like it was nothing. Yet he had. My apartment building loomed ahead, its gray concrete facade even more depressing under the flickering streetlights. I fumbled with my keys, hands still trembling so badly I dropped them twice. The lock finally clicked. Inside, the familiar smell of old takeout containers and damp carpet wrapped around me like a damp rag. I kicked the door shut, leaned against it for a long moment and just breathed. I stripped off the wet hoodie and jeans, leaving them in a soggy pile on the floor, and stepped into the shower. The water started lukewarm and quickly turned icy, but I stayed under the spray anyway, scrubbing at my skin like I could wash the memory away. My ribs still ached where his arms had gripped me. My waist felt branded by the pressure of his hands. And worse, embarrassingly worse, was the way my body had reacted. Pressed against him, adrenaline screaming through me, I had gotten hard. What the fuck was wrong with me? He saved your life, and your dick's first response is to get excited. You really are broken, Rowan. I pressed my forehead to the cracked tile, letting the cold water run over my face. Questions swirled endlessly. Who was he? How could anyone move like that? Why did he save me at all, some random suicidal guy on a bridge? And why, after setting me down, had he looked at me like I was something he wanted to devour and protect at the same time? I turned the shower off eventually, dried off with a threadbare towel, and crawled into bed wearing just boxers. The thin blanket felt heavier tonight. For the first time in months, the usual wave of just ended didn't crash over me the second my head hit the pillow. Instead, my mind kept circling back to the stranger. The cold touch, the voice, the way the air itself seemed to shift around him. I pulled the blanket over my head, curled into a tight ball, and whispered into the darkness. Thank you, whoever you are. Somewhere out in the night, beyond my cracked window and flimsy curtains, I swore I felt eyes on me. Watching, waiting, a heavy, patient presence that made the hairs on my arms rise. I told myself it was just paranoia. I almost believed it.